And in that journey, he would run across a Sasquatch. Americans, everyone loves a mystery. And it's like my style of art. I love drawing mushrooms and
Yes,
salamanders and
exactly.
trees, not battleships and, armament.
We are the Front Page Pass, brought to you by Word Journeys, the literary world's hottest new podcast. Fellow publishing industry expert and author, illustrator, designer join together in bringing you the latest news, discussions, and literary-related entertainment for readers, writers, and educators alike. Okay, so welcome to Front Page Pass. We're currently on episode number 4, and I have to say we're enjoying ourselves. As you can see, we are missing one of the hosts, Bobby Elling. So you guys are going to be stuck with me today. But anyways, he's out on the road to California, which that means there's some good things in store. We have a lot of really interesting guests coming up. One today that is in California, but I will just be interviewing while I'm alone. But in the upcoming weeks, Bob will be interviewing a wide array of people, of different authors, all across different genres. So we have a lot of different personalities we're going to be introducing on the podcast. So we're all looking forward to that a whole lot. And as I did mention on episode 1, just kind of some things that we had in store for Front Page Pass and Word Journeys as a whole, because, Front Page Pass is presented by us. So we'll be going to quite a few writers' conferences since things are starting to open up, during the pandemic. I mean, things were virtual or events were canceled altogether, and ones that we would have been to, that we all went to fairly frequently. The last one that I recall going to was Digital Book World, pre-pandemic 2019. I sure do miss those days. But anyways, we'll be getting back to it here soon, and we plan to bring you guys some vlogs. We're going to do a bit of streaming. Some that we are potentially going to would be the Southern California Writers Conference, Missouri Writers Guild Conference. One that I really do want to go to is Killer Nashville, which is a conference specifically aimed at thriller, mystery, suspense, etc. And I think they do delve into some horror. And these are all just potential podcasts. Or potential places we're going to be going to. So, in the San Francisco Writers for Change Conference is one that we were looking at. So, there's just quite a few, just kind of speculation right now, but we really do plan on going to them and bringing you guys some killer content along the way. So, and especially Digital Book World, which happens to be one of my favorite ones out there. We're going to be interviewing some of the biggest names in the literary game as well. So, anyway, so we're going to get to interviewing a guest that we've worked with for quite some time, and he is make quite a career for himself, author Greg Walter of the Ridgewalkers. So, all right. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys to a guest that we have all really been looking forward to having on, Greg Walter, author of the Ridgewalkers. He is also a historian, veteran, and I would say a cryptozoologist. Really, has a lot of enthusiasm about Bigfoot and that entire community, and just a lot of knowledge and really interesting things to talk about. And as I said, his new book, The Ridgewalkers, was just unveiled last year. So we're all still really excited about that. So, Greg, just tell us a bit about your book. I know you're going to read us a segment from it, probably one of your favorites, right?
Yes. So I'm Greg Walter. I'm a new author, and I've had a lovely experience with Alexa, the Word Journeys team, and helping me with marketing, publishing, editing, all aspects of book production. And so it's been wonderful. It's been quite a journey as far as doing this in the middle of a pandemic.
Yes.
But also I think that it's still been something that I've greatly looked forward to, and continuing work in all of this direction, and the whole process has sort of unfolded. And I'm sure this happens for authors, where it starts with a book and then they realize, well, geez, I want to look at this more from the standpoint of a screenplay. And then through friends and so forth like this that I have that are very knowledgeable in this, told me, well, Greg, why don't you try to format this to a 7-episode miniseries, designed for television. And then if you had to, you could go back and make it into a screenplay.
Exactly.
It's a very simple move there. And then in that, I plan to do some revisions that I think are just going to make the book even flow faster.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I'm having a lot of fun with that. If you want me to, I can even start with, so I can start with obviously reading a segment of the book.
Sure, yeah. If you could kind of explain to some of our audience here, of course I have before. I know I did a brief reading and kind of talked somewhat and summarized your book. But if you want to kind of just as like a quick summary of the book, and then the chapter that you plan to read or the segment you plan to read, whether it's from the miniseries aspect of it or the book itself. So yeah, looking forward to hearing it.
Okay, yeah, I could do both.
Okay.
Yeah, so the book is based on a man's life, basically my life. Going all the way back to the U.S. Coast Guard, and even before that, my early upbringing, and how I got into the grandeur of nature, and all the different things it offers. And in that, I sort of stumbled into a situation. Well, I went through sort of. It's almost like Alex as a character. That would be me. Goes through a series of sort of mistakes, but also struggles in his life, that then from there, led him up on a fishing boat in Alaska that almost rolls, and that was, of course, right at midnight. You got to love these things when they happen at midnight during a storm in a nasty place.
You have to be mean to your characters, in other words.
Yeah. And so
have a bit of adversity, yeah.
So through that, he would come out the other end, and he realized that he needed redemption, and he had to go on this journey, and in that journey, he would run across a Sasquatch. Now, the backstory of that is that in the book, and this is to create characters and so forth like this, and this is all based on a real life experience, from my own life. But it also has to do with the antagonist and building that side of the story, and then from there also building the world of the Sasquatch, and I actually ran with that from native lore, where they say that these things exist in two worlds, and so however we wish to interpolate that, and so that's what I decided to do, was world building on that other side.
Yes.
And so it takes place on another planet, part of the book does, and then from there there's also a billionaire that is also basically hired hunters to go after this thing, and so that way they can hang him in a trophy room, along with his white buffalo, and so forth like this, like billionaires all love to do.
Of course, yes. And that's where somewhat of the strong environmental message comes into play also, and kind of preserving,
yes,
the spiritual aspect of it. Yeah.
So that's the thing with the strong environmental message, is that I have these things, rather than in the horror genre, like Stephen King loves to put, creatures of yore. I just like to put them more in a spiritual realm, and something where, they more or less want to help us, but also they need us to help ourselves. And, and in the situation that we've built, there's a great book by Robin Kemmerer, I think her name is, Braiding Sweetgrass. And in that, she talks about how, have we come to a place where we fear our own atmosphere? And,
that's interesting. Yes.
And that, to me, that really stuck and really resonated, just because of the fact that it's not just the fires in the West, it's tornadoes, it's storms, it's everything. And a friend of mine also mentioned one time that, it's like, what's the aggregate cost of global warming? What is it costing everybody, the U.S. taxpayer, and just people personally, as far as loss of home and so forth like this. And so that's kind of the environmental part of it. Another message there too that was rather interesting was that how in the Northwest, in one of the towns up there, they had a salmon festival this last year, and everybody had to eat chicken because there was no salmon.
No salmon, exactly. Yes.
And so, right there, that's another, it's one of the other markers saying, okay, we've come too far with this, and we got problems, and they have to get fixed. And
in your book, the way you wrote it, those messages into your book is done in a really well way, where it's subtle enough that it's not, that the message doesn't become preachy, but at the same time, I mean, you still get it across just through the characters and the events that unfold, and some of like the more philosophical musings that I really enjoyed in the book. So I feel like that the way you portrayed that message, as an author, you really did it justice, to be quite honest. So
cool.
Thank
you. So anyways, the part I'm going to read in the book that I thought was I don't know, there's parts of the book that really resonated with me, that I thought, hey, this is strong. This has got a good message here. And so this is part where Alex is in a transition. He lost his lovely girlfriend Deanna,
Mm-hmm.
and basically is in this place of, okay, I guess I have to go walking on the ridges. And so in that, he is preparing for the trip, and he goes into a fishing guide, little store or establishment, and he's outside, and the fishing guide is an older man, and he's in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other fishing guides are off doing their thing, but this guy, he was like the patriarch of the business.
Yes.
And this actually happened to me. This was in a little
Mm-hmm.
hamlet up there in Northern California. And this guy was just crazy as hell. But it was kind of fun because he did make the message of saying, well, getting time to burn it, like this. So that's the part I'll read. Are we
Okay.
ready?
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
All right.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. And so working on the fishing trawler until it nearly capsized on a dark, stormy night provided a wake up and a search for meaning, my true self. Near death experiences can do that. I was in good physical shape and could backpack across the landscape with ease. I knew the general route, and the only available map showed a trail that looked deceitfully easy. While planning for the trip, I made a brief stop at a small crossroads, a riverside hamlet, where I struck up a conversation with Glenn Plunker of Plunker's Guide Service. The owner, the local elderly fishing guide, was now restricted to a wheelchair. I engaged in light conversation about the area and how the fish were biting. The old timer enjoyed my queries. Are the native salmon runs being affected by the dams? I asked. Boy, did that open a can of worms. Damn straight there, kid. Salmon have paid a heavy price for so-called progress. I hit a sore point, so I shifted topics, making a casual mention of backpacking on the nearby ridgelines. The old man suddenly grabbed my forearm tightly, glaring up at me from his wheelchair with sharp, mean, beady eyes and a stern warning. You be careful up there, boy. That's hallowed ground. There are sacred sites you better keep an eye out, especially in those places, or they will... His grandson walked up. Come on, Grandpa, he interrupted. It's dinner and you got to get in. The last time I saw Glenn Plunker, he was being wheeled into the house, mumbling loudly. Yep, getting time to burn it. Burn it all, he was referring to the forest. He looked over at me and shouted, you be watchful, boy. They're up there. His voice trailed off as the door closed behind him, including his final command, burn it all. The future would prove those words prophetic.
That's interesting. It kind of throws a bit of humor in with, kind of the dark portending of what's to come, I guess,
It was heavy. I mean...
Yeah, but I mean, the symbolism there. Yeah, can you kind of dive into that a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, but it was interesting how the fishing guide, I mean, he understood it.
Exactly,
and he
yeah.
knew
The two of them were
that
on
there
the
were
same
places
page.
up there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, is that, the takeaway message in that also is that in everybody's respective area, I mean, this is around the globe, that there's occasionally you run across these spots that are of a sacred nature.
Mm-hmm.
And you may or may not know it, you may or may not sense it, but they've been used traditionally for thousands of years as such. And so it's kind of interesting when you get out there in different places, like the Judicula Rock is an example in Western North Carolina.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And there's places in Kentucky and different places that have these places. And so it's
all across
so
the
it's
world,
really
essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
all over the world. And so
Well, with you delving into kind of combining, ancient native lore and with a lot of the adventurous aspects and, and with magical realism, I was going to ask, I mean, how did you kind of approach writing that? I know you obviously you want to stay respectful and make sure that things are authentic, but at the same time, I know you kind of up the adventure aspect of events that happen in the book. So I was just kind of curious on how you balance that out.
I did that through
because I know it came through years and years of research.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, a lot of research, a lot of talking to various people, both tribal members and
Yes.
also just people in general. And then from there, also diving into the Bigfoot world a little bit, just to get what they are doing. And so it did take a lot of, there's a lot of backstories in this. And I wanted to be obviously respectful and careful about it. I sort of made a steadfast pact with myself that I would not reveal tribal names and I would
Exactly.
not reveal areas.
Hmm.
Even though now I wish that in the book that I should have done a map, that shows sort of the general area, just like
Hmm.
they do in the Lord of the Rings, where like this is the land of the hobbits, and this sort of thing.
Yes.
And so it would have been fun to do a map,
Hmm.
and in my next book. But
It's a
anyways, yeah,
possibility. You should give it a go then.
yeah, right,
um,
right. But basically, to answer that question though,
mm,
is that it did take a lot of research, and also I felt like I but there were salient points I wanted to hit upon,
mm,
and I thought it was important to get the message out there that there's more to these things than just having them as this hairy fanged creature that attacks
some
lost
scary
backpack.
folklore, essentially. You wanted to kind of put, yeah, that's what, and I do appreciate that how you brought in kind of the metaphysical aspect and a lot of philosophical things to mention
Yes.
as well. So, how you really tied that in. And it's kind of interesting. I was going to ask, just concerning you jumping from outside of the horror genre. Did you, at any point, in your, studies of Bigfoot, were you considering writing horror? Or as Bigfoot, you always approached the Bigfoot, from that genre, from
Well,
magical realism.
it would be much more popular, and that's probably something that appeals to me in that respect.
Mm.
Uh, I've got so many other things I want to write about, but it would be fun to do it in the horror genre, just to see,
Hmm.
and in a sense, I also did that with
Hmm.
him because in a sense, like these hunters that want to
Hmm.
go after him. Some people might consider those evil hunters and so forth, but then others might say, hey, those guys are out there with guns, they're having fun. What's the
Yeah,
problem?
yeah. I guess it's all
It's
about perspective. Yeah,
yeah,
I see
yeah,
how you weren't exactly wanting to perpetuate the whole narrative that he just belongs in the horror genre, keep him there, keep people scared of it, that whole concept. So,
right.
yeah, it's
Right.
interesting. Is there
Well,
anything in particular you used as a tool in writing? I know that a lot of you said that a lot of these books or the events that happened in this book obviously happened in real life. So was any of this kind of therapeutic for you? I know that writing is therapeutic for essentially anybody, whether you're writing fiction and it's not based on anything that happened in life, or whether it's something that you're pretty much doing what you did, where most of it is based on real events, more or less. Was it kind of a therapeutic tool for you?
yes, it
Mm-hmm.
was. I mean, I felt like I wanted to get that story out
Mm-hmm.
there, and I also wanted to provide insight to the story that I would place out there. So it was something that it was somewhat therapeutic. I felt like I should have in a way I wanted to be careful with that because I also wanted to make it of entertaining value to the reader, and
Mm-hmm.
so that was very important.
Exactly.
um, and that's also how it's changing, where I'm writing it in the format of dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and and more through the lens of a camera rather than a written word.
Exactly.
So
It's funny because we had just discussed that on our episode 3, our last podcast, and just kind of talked about the difference in, I actually talked about how a lot of authors do start with dialogue. So we discussed how, having the ability to write a good screenplay will help you with writing a novel and vice versa, essentially, just how it's kind of its own toolkit in writing dialogue and fleshing it out, making it authentic. So since you are working on this mini series, can you talk a bit about how your writing technique has changed? Coming from someone who has wrote this magical realism novel, that mostly focuses heavily. You do have a lot of great dialogue sequences, but it focuses heavily on the narrative to push the story along, versus this screenplay that lets dialogue carry the story along, so to speak. So how is that for you? How's
so
that shift for you, essentially,
so
as a
it's
writer?
challenging. It's challenging.
Challenging,
I mean,
right?
we're dealing with a lot of writer's block, and trying to figure it out. Going in the backyard and kicking rocks around. Um, you know, just trying to figure out how to best convey the message,
Hmm.
and and then from there how to carry the reader and or viewer into the story, where they literally get dragged up in the net with the fish that is placed on the fishing boat
Hmm.
that is up there in Alaska. And so I'll give an example, and this is just a 2 page, and
Okay.
basically the story would open, and so this is on a backdrop of mountain ridges and forests, oddly different. Two sets of hands and shaggy looking heads climbing over a sharp rock wall leading to a side meadow just off the main trail nearby. Sig, you know we're both crazy for doing this risky stunt. Look, Sax, I know it's here, the small one yelled. It won't be here for very long either. In the meadow, standing upright, a shimmering disk seems to float in the air. Sig, you are sure this rock will travel all the way? Sax asks. Sig shows off the rock as a hard, shiny piece of platinum. Yes, this will make it to the other world. I overheard Master Bostrom talk from one of your classes. What? You little rascal? You could be in a lot of trouble for that. We could both be in deeper for this, Sax pleads. Sig turns his head and replied, I've overheard you say, take the risk and reap the reward. So which is it? Okay, Sax, exasperated. We take risk for something worthy, not petty crimes that violate trust among elders. You are just crazy, Sig. Sig is already running towards the disc on his young short legs and throws as hard as he can into the center of the disc. It gets sucked in, disappearing into the liquidous oval. Sax quickly runs over and grabs Sig, pulling him away, Sig laughing. The scene expands out to the unusual night sky with planets close in. And so this is where, and a blue-green Milky Way close by, that indicates, okay, this is happening on another planet. And so the scene would dictate that. So the shiny rock flying at hyperspeed through space in a traversable wormhole, almost imperceivable on its trajectory for Earth. And then open at night, a celestial galaxy alive and moving, shooting stars amid distant planets above, the rock descending down, down, down into blue-gray cloud. A loud wind growing louder, clouds break momentarily, closing from 6,000 feet, whistling and descending with breaking waves, becoming more visible in the sounds of a howling wind and an angry sea, fading in from 2,000 feet above, a fishing trawler getting bounced about in a place known for rough waters and confused seas. Close in, closer, the rock is falling ahead of the ship, and then the rock would fall in the ocean. And from there, that's when you'd see the school of cod, and then the net would sweep them up. And then the story would basically open on the factory trawler floor and all the activities there, and then go up into the galley area where Alex is working, and then it would.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, you said that perfectly when you said you're kind of writing it now through the lens of a camera or from the actor's perspective, I suppose. So yeah, your emphasis on dialogue is really shows through there. But so I'm kind of curious, and I think it would be good just to kind of explain to the audience a bit how your book, The Ridgewalkers, honestly transcends the Bigfoot genre, because people have a lot of stigmas and their idea of what the Bigfoot crowd entails and kind of what the lore is behind it and the legend. So kind of explain a little bit how you wrote it specifically to where the Ridgewalkers can appeal to the science fiction crowd, or and again bringing up the environmental message that is within your book, because you've also somewhat briefly, obviously it is two totally different worlds, but you did compare it somewhat to Avatar in a sense. So if you could kind of explain that a little bit for the audience and how you wrote it that way intentionally. So
it was so once again, it was quite the journey to be able to take this on, but I felt like within the genre that we needed to have a different perspective on this.
Yes.
And I also felt like that these things, well, first of all, Americans, everyone loves a mystery, and
exactly,
so
yes.
And that I think is one of the fascinating things that holds so many people to this. It's why it's become so popular. It's why these guys are out there with flashlights at night. Why does everybody's flashlight not work very well? So that way it's like you're in this complete darkness. You don't get these flashlights that are bright as anything and light up everything. Instead, it's some faded little beam out there. And of course, that just adds to the, oh my God, what's going to jump out of the woods and do something bad? So, it's a point of suspense. But with this, I felt like that the world building had to be there, that the other planet, I also wanted to make it where it was somewhat in peril.
Yes.
And the problems that they're having there. And so, and that could be a population of anything living on a planet that overruns the planet. And so, and it could be also that the planet is also having problems like large asteroids and fun little things like
Mhm.
this that kind of upset the apple cart. Um,
Exactly.
but the but as far as the horror genre, or with this, I think people, I mean, people love to be scared, to
Mhm.
to actually go through those feelings. And um and so and and so it was a challenge, though, to make it where I also kept the reader engaged,
Mhm.
and also make it where, the science fiction, I had to have science in this. and
Exactly.
so and so this involved sort of a, little touch of Neil deGrasse Tyson,
Mhm.
and
It does, yeah.
also, the world building of Avatar, and how the tribe would live and sustain itself.
Mhm.
And then obviously there was the threat, and the threat being that people want the unobtainium, and
Mhm.
so, and this is the thing, is that in this case, the Bigfoot himself became the commodity. And that's
Exactly.
and that's what the hunter. And then the other thing I tried to tie in too was to have, or I did tie in, was to have the treasure story, the treasure hunt, and in that same mode of using long range
Mhm.
locators, that you could use that for finding a Sasquatch, because it could aid in finding those power spots.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
so and so that was an extrapolation, but I thought it was a good one. That
I
it
think it
it
was an
kind of
accurate comparison. That's definitely why I brought it up, because I felt like it did do your book justice to even make that comparison to begin with. So because like I said, people would look at it, and like I said, there's that whole stigma that you're trying to break through concerning Bigfoot, and it really does. It totally transcends that, just by breaking into those other genres and stuff. I am curious, though. I
yes.
was going to ask a bit about just the publishing process as a whole and your writing process and how you've evolved as a writer. Kind of like, was it a mantra or some advice that you've told yourself throughout this entire process, that's kind of kept you going? I mean, what's really just kept you in the zone and kept you motivated throughout this entire thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to think about that. I think it was something that I really wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I felt like the story would be popular enough.
Hmm.
I have 3 or 4 other books I want to write,
Hmm.
mainly about my grandfather's story, and
Yeah, could you
so
talk
forth
a bit
like this.
about those? Yeah, that was a question I was going to ask you, is if you plan to branch into any other genres or anything like that outside of the miniseries.
Yes, this
Mm-hmm.
would be so. So the other story that I'm writing right now, I even have a name for it, the Destroyer Man, and
Look at
and
that.
basically it's about my grandfather. So this would go back, well, about 120
Mm-hmm.
years ago. And it would start. So I did it kind of chronologically, and it would be a 2-part book. So it would have his early upbringing, because he grew up on a Shaker colony in Enfield, Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
and that is now. It's funny that that South Colony in Enfield is now the
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts State Penitentiary, um, and or at least part of it is.
Yeah, I
Um,
understand.
but but at any rate, his early upbringing, and how, he was born out of
Mm-hmm.
wedlock, and then from there, what happened was it World War I was afoot,
Mm-hmm.
and here he was, a 16-year-old, and basically his mother signing him up to go into the Navy, and obviously he probably wanted to go anyways, for duty and honor and
Mm-hmm.
so forth like this. But he so there's that internal struggle of where, yet he was born with, or raised in this community of peace loving Shakers,
Mm-hmm.
to tell their story a little bit. But from there, he'd go into World War I, and then from there, he'd obviously get more training as he went through the years there in the early and mid 20s. Yeah, even having a picture of him where he's an instructor at the Naval Academy in, probably signalman duties and so
Mm-hmm.
forth.
Yes.
But he was a chief signalman at that time. Well, that would lead him into the USS Pittsburgh, and aboard the they're going over into China, and this was during a nationalist uprising or a civil war over there, and basically explaining some of the political machinations that created that
Mm-hmm.
whole situation there, and how these respective countries were basically they sent over their destroyers or battleships to basically protect the embassies from the Civil War that was occurring and try to stay out of the Civil War.
Yes, I
And
understand.
so that was an interesting part. So that would be book one, and then book two would take him into World War II. So this was after 20 years of service. He was
Okay.
called back from the reserves, and then from there he was at basically all 7 invasions aboard 5 different destroyers
Wow.
in the European theater, and culminating at D-Day and then southern France, and and so yeah,
As
it's
somebody who is an author and historian, and obviously, you delve into a lot of metaphysical elements of things concerning your writing. Do you feel like this will be a challenge to go from? I mean, obviously there are some things within the Ridgewalkers that are true, but there are other aspects of it that were But is that going to be a bit of a challenge for you to shift from writing a book similar like the Ridgewalkers into something that's just complete, straight factual, just historical? Do you think that will pose a challenge for you as a writer or help you grow or anything?
Oh yes, definitely, because I'm diving into more historical fiction
Exactly.
where it's a story all the way through it, but I've got to reinvent the characters, and so and it's like my style of art. I love drawing mushrooms and salamanders
Yes,
and
exactly.
trees, not battleships and armament. Yeah.
So are you going to do illustrations for those as well?
I'm going to try my college
All right.
best.
So that'll help you grow as an author and illustrator then, huh?
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, or just drive me to drink,
Well,
one or the other.
Let's not do that. Just give up on it. Call somebody else if it gets to that point, Greg. I wouldn't recommend it.
Been
But
there, done that. No.
I know
No,
it.
I'm done with my drink.
That's
But
good.
but anyway, it's something that that is a challenge, and it's also going to be, it's going to require a voluminous amount of research. But one such, I mean, here's it for you. I spent 3.5 hours the other night up until midnight and past going through the U.S. Naval Institute, their archive of books they have for sale, and there's 1,132 books. Don't ask me why I remember that.
Yeah.
But I went through every title, and there was nothing on nationalist uprising in China and the USS Pittsburgh.
Interesting.
Zero. So and I have the pictures. I have all this different material about this. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun
Try to dig it up.
to write that even the Naval Institute might see a use of.
Yeah, I would say so. So, it's been a joy talking to you. I mean, I would like to, for you to throw any promotional stuff you would like to out there. I mean, I would highly recommend getting Greg's book. I mean, I've read it. We all have, honestly. And it's not like I've explained this before. It's not just because that I worked on the book with you as far as I didn't do the illustrations. Greg did, and they are wonderful. I would highly recommend checking those out, and you can also go and get those. But I did the cover for Greg's book. It was an absolute joy. And like I said, it's not just because that I worked alongside you. I mean, I would pick up this book and read it if I saw it on the shelf and had no idea who you were. I mean, I would have really enjoyed the book. So is there anything else you'd like to say just to kind of tell the audience to go check out your book?
Check out the book and, follow me on Facebook. I do a lot of historical stuff on there,
Yes.
Especially regional historic. I'm active in a community in Southwest Oregon, and it's been a wonderful journey. The word journeys, hey, great wording there, guys. It's
Thank you for pointing that
it's
out,
been
Greg.
really, but I think that it's, and I think with writers, especially new writers or the new authors, it's always this where they're always trying to improve. They're always trying
Exactly.
to get it better, write it better, edit. Have I mentioned editing? And so it just requires
The struggle, yes.
focus, but it's been great, and I do not regret 1 minute of doing all this and getting the help. And that's one thing that authors, I think, we need help, mentally, physically, literally, and, in all aspects of this. And Alexa Black's artwork on the front cover was a major seller. I mean,
Well, thank you.
it's been really good. And so I hold no regrets. But I'm still going to need the help. So keep up your good work.
Well, you keep up the good work too, Greg. Keep writing. The audience and the fan base that you've built that really enjoy the book, and not only that, I mean, really enjoy just your postings, your musings, the philosophical musings are really interesting, and the tidbits on Bigfoot are obviously great. So you keep up the good work as well. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And I look forward to having you back on whenever you get done with the mini series. I'd like to have you back on, and when you get started, either midway or when you get the historical book published, we'd love to have you back on as a guest. So
cool. Thank you.
Yep, definitely. Yep, you'll be a repeat guest. So but yeah, it was great. It was great talking with you. So
all right.
All
good
right.
Word journey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So anyways, once again, that was author Greg Walter with The Ridgewalkers. Quite a good book, very adventurous, very interesting tale if you've been with us the entire interview. So I would highly recommend you get the book, obviously. So we're going to do what we do every single time to end our episodes, and that will be reading the chart toppers, New York Times bestseller list, fiction and nonfiction. So I'll go through and read those. For fiction, number 1 is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. It's 8 weeks on the list. Number 2 is Wind by Harlan Coben. 2 weeks on the list. Number 3 is The Consequences of Fear by Jacqueline Winspear, which is new this week. Number 4 is Double Jeopardy by Stuart Woods, also new this week. And then number 5 would be The Bounty by Janet Ivanovich and Steve Hamilton, which is new this week, and I apologize if I messed up the pronunciation of her name. Nonfiction would be... The nonfiction category would be number 1, The Code Breaker by Walter Isaacson, 3 weeks on the list. Number 2 is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, which is 23 weeks on the list. Number 3, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 31 weeks on the list. Number 4 is Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, 34 weeks on the list. And number 5 is Becoming by Michelle Obama, which is 102 weeks on the list. That's quite an accomplishment there. So... anyways, really enjoyed this episode. You guys just stick with us and we'll keep bringing you all content, so keep visiting. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all of our socials. We're essentially on everything. The handle is @WordJourneys. So we have a ton of cool tips on there. Just anything that's going on in the literary world, we pretty much are on top of it and cover it. So just stick with us and we'll see what happens. All right, thank you.
Thank you for joining us at Front Page Pass, where we present everything from new titles to rocking interviews with best-selling authors and publishing experts, writing and editing tips, the latest on the bookshelves for readers, and live coverage of writers' festivals, conferences, and author signings. Our mission: to serve up the world in a thrilling, wonderful, and most adventurous new way.